Okay. Hey guys, welcome. Welcome to this session of Vedantis's Thought Leadership Series. This is a podcast series where we unpack how data, strategy, and technology unlock value in enterprise processes. Today's session is all about reimagining procurement, how it's no longer just a simple purchasing or a back office support function, but how it's more of a strategic enabler that helps align teams, democratize data, and also uses AI for better, smarter sourcing decisions that drives business outcomes. Joining me today is Mr. Christopher Smith, who's done exactly that. Christopher is a procurement leader with deep expertise in public procurement and also in the enterprise space. Chris, welcome. Do you want to do a quick round of
Good
introduction?
morning. Good morning to those joining in the United States. And Kevin, thanks to you. Good evening to you, Kevin. Uh, it's a great opportunity to
Yep.
talk about public procurement excellence today, and I really appreciate being here today.
Yep. Awesome. Thanks so much, Chris, for taking the time. So we'll get started. Uh, let's rewind a bit, Chris. What first pulled you into procurement and how do you think this role has evolved over the last few years?
Well, I've worked in the private and public sectors at the federal, state, and local levels, and most recently in Virginia for the city of Alexandria and Fairfax County before transitioning into procurement consulting. And we've gone from the Stone
I
Ages,
see.
everything from pen and paper to ERPs like SAP Focus, Tyler Technologies Munis, and e-procurement platforms like Bonfire, Cobblestone, and others. Yet procurement still often feels that it's like an afterthought in these systems. They're not truly fully optimized. They often don't talk to each other, and that means our redundant data entry, workarounds, a lot of waste and redundancy, frustration, lost time, lost opportunities, and our stakeholders and our customers really deserve better. We must lead and do better.
Yeah, absolutely. And today, procurement touches pretty much all aspects of business processes, right? You have ESG, asset management, risk, compliance. What do you think is driving this ongoing transformation?
Well, we've seen procurement evolve from the paperwork heavy digitally to now digitally driven. And this mind shift really has happened for a variety of reasons. One, COVID was the ultimate disruptor in terms of supply chain. And we begin to see a strengthened case to do things in a more agile, in a more mobile way. And a really strong business case to digitize and modernize and get away from pen and paper. In addition, the overall shift begins when we start looking at this shift. We need to start considering people, process, technology in that order. The government procurement is very different than private sector in that we're very reactive, we're very not risk tolerant, we are very risk resistant, and so we're in a high resistance culture with unions, and we've always done it this way. And so a change management case here of being able to do this in government per se for procurement is important. Some of these environments can be toxic for innovators and change agents. So those people often don't last very long in the government space that want to actually do the modernization. And then change doesn't come easy when long tenured staff can just wait it out in their unions, or senior executive leadership often is just counting their days, their weeks, or even a couple of years till retirement. So there isn't a lot of incentive for innovation in the public sector procurement area. So in the public procurement, unlike private industry, the change isn't driven by margin or revenue. It's driven by service, compliance, and public trust.
That makes sense. And I recall not too long ago, procurement was largely relegated to purchasing and contracts. Today we have all these specific, very strategic roles, right? You have folks in strategic sourcing, you have indirect procurement, you have global procurement process owners. How did we get here? And what's how did this graduation in a procurement role come about?
Yeah. So as I said, COVID and supply chain disruptions were very big in the public sector here in the United States, especially at the state local levels. Um, and of course, the rapid changes in inflation. Since then, we're seeing all kinds of global disruptions, from tariffs to embargoes to all kinds of uncertainty. So that uncertainties and the price uncertainty and supply chain uncertainty obviously is another major strategic thing where In the past, I wouldn't say that the supply chain ever made it into the risk management function of government or in organizations, until more recently. So now we're
Mhm.
seeing that it's critical. It's kind of like the ozone layer. Procurement is an after back office thing until it doesn't exist or until something happens, so a problem happens. So we're now being very reactive to that risk and to those opportunities. Um, with less resources, less staffing, budgeting, having to do more with less, the public procurement, public purchasing, and I actually was part of a purchasing division, which was under finance. So where purchasing and procurement exists in the organization is also key. But more recently, procurement has changed reactively. It's evolved out of necessity. It started like the Wild Wild West, chaotic and unchecked, until major cases of fraud, waste, abuse, and noncompliance and corruption pushed reforms forward, and the things like supply chain disruption we mentioned within COVID. ERP systems came along, but procurement was often not at the table or not one of the requirements of these ERP systems. It was around HR, payroll, finance, and things like that. But procurement and the contract management module and the strategic impacts that procurement can have was usually an afterthought, a late module, and often the key players weren't involved in their implementation. So COVID-19 was a tipping point. Suddenly, risk management and procurement were front and center. Procurement now includes, like you said, supply chain continuity, diverse vendor development, sustainability goals, risk management, diversity, SWAM programs, sustainability, complex compliance. But yet, too many agencies still treat procurement or purchasing as often, and I hate the word purchasing because we need to evolve from purchasing to procurement. They treat
Yeah.
us without respect until something really goes wrong. And then we start to get the resources, the attention we're looking for. So I'd like to say, we're like the intelligence community, like 9/11 in the United States. You're only noticed when we're missing and when it's often too late. We're supposed to be predictive and get everything done there. Or we're like the ozone layer. No one thinks about us until something goes wrong. And when it fails, the damage can be widespread, long lasting, and very difficult to repair. So it's very important that we get out of the purchasing mindset and the administrative mindset into the strategic procurement mindset going forward.
No, that makes sense. It's also in line with our experience here at Vedantis. We speak with procurement folks to move it from a reactive approach to a proactive approach that requires change in a bunch of processes. And we believe that, data is at the heart of it, right? We give the right data to the right teams, the right procurement professional at the right time. We think that, that's going to enable them with better decision making. What are your thoughts on that? Everyone says data is key, but what does
Yeah.
clean, harmonized,
So
and
if
reliable
we're
data
saying right
unlock for an
now at the
organization?
federal, state, local government level that we're making informed decisions on great data, we're not telling the truth. Really, we have a bad data problem. You're absolutely correct. And in terms of, and if you're
Right.
making decisions on bad data, you're guessing. Your gut is you're doing the best you can with the most informed data you have, trusting what you think is right and what's not. So we have, that is the core issue. We must have clean data. We must have reliable data. In some cases, we need to even be tracking and mock. You get what, I have $100,000 plus MBA from Virginia Tech. And if I could only give people the one sentence from that $100,000 MBA executive degree, it's you get what you measure, and what you measure needs to be accurate, valid data, right? So that's really the heart of it. So in short, what data can unlock when data is key, we can have real-time reliable dashboards. We can have metrics and measures and KPIs and SLAs for executives to not make those gut decisions. So the organization can begin to make strategic, well-informed decisions that will positively affect their mission, their objectives, their goals, their vision, their values. um, if you don't measure or have the data, the measurements, the metrics, the goals, the outcomes, you're guessing, you're making gut decisions. And a lot of the executives have been successful in making the right gut decisions. But how would you like to have real-time visibility into correct data and make better decisions in a more agile way with better outcomes? So it's about the visibility and trust ultimately, and government trust is everything. As you know, that all-time low trust in US governments, and I guess governments possibly around the world, where everyone is, with AI and transparency, everyone's questioning everything. There's more accountability and responsibility than ever before. So we need that visibility and trust, and procurement data that is scattered, that is not well maintained, that is not planned for, that is not invested in. within, whether it's in ERPs, SharePoint, Eva, shared drives, wherever it may grow, or even homegrown tools, whatever, wherever it is, it needs to be shared. It needs to be transparent. It needs to be accurate and clean. So that tasks like sourcing, onboarding, FOIAs, contract closeout, contract startup, vendor vetting, risk mitigation, that are typically slower, error prone, and redundant can be done more effectively. Even in the US, getting like tax IDs, licenses, insurance, bonds can be a nightmare to be able to track, to have that data, knowing when those things expire, if they're real or not, if they've been checked or not. Compliance is another thing. We need to have accurate data, and that will set the stage for AI to be able to come in and get rid of some of these intern level jobs and these entry level jobs that are redundant, that no one wants to do anyway. They have high turnover rates. They're boring. They're with human error. They're risk prone. So clean data will enable automation, artificial intelligence, performance measurement, supplier verification, smarter sourcing, better procurement excellence ultimately. Without it, we're just guessing. And as we learned from my MBA, you get what you measure, and you can't measure without reliable data.
Absolutely. And in your experience, you mentioned it yourself, there's data from multiple sources, you have your ERP system, shared drives. In your experience, how have you gone about building this unified view of procurement data, in real life, and what sort of challenges do you think you faced while doing so?
Um, the challenges, the main challenges there are getting executive leadership and investment, right? Is to be able to build the business case where everyone, HR is trying to pull theirs, risk is trying to pull theirs, operations everyone's trying to pull their share of the money. So there's not unlimited money, and so the budgets are tight. You need executive sponsorship, and you need investment. And the key word is those two words: executive sponsorship and investment. So we've been fighting the battle to write the strong business cases with strong ROIs to get our fair share, and it's coming, but it's a lot slower than a lot of us would like it to be.
And okay, that makes sense. How do you think MRO data, right, data specific to maintenance operations or manufacturing operations, impacts procurement decision making in larger organizations, especially in industries that are asset intensive, even in the public space, right? Distribution, electricity generation. Do you think data pertaining to MRO is often overlooked as far as procurement strategies are concerned? And what are the risks of
Yeah,
doing
I
so?
do. I think what we're doing in procurement is we're increasing the dollar threshold for what procurement's involved in. And so procurement has a dollar threshold of like 1,000 or less, or 10,000 or less, or whatever the threshold is. And so we're offering, we're kind of disseminating that out to the operations teams, like the fleet that manage the vehicles, or the construction folks, or the combined services that manage all the facilities. And so they're managing the roads, the road maintenance, construction, and or even the fleet for all the vehicles that a government needs to run to be able to be successful. So when we raise the dollar threshold, we're getting those small purchases aren't being managed well, and it's up to those individual organizations like fleet to do their own MRO, right? So you're not doing MRO at the I guess at the organization level, but at department levels. And so you may or may not be doing that. You may or may not be doing that well, which isn't really effective. So MRO spend is often overlooked because it's behind the scenes. Like you said, it's low dollar, high frequency purchases that fly under the radar. But in government, MRO is mission critical, just like it is in the private sector. Although we do MRO differently in government, it keeps the schools open, the police fleets running, the parks maintained, the facilities safe. Without good data, it becomes reactive, redundant, and risky. And so you're spending more time just sustaining the operations with emergencies, with not knowing you're out of whatever supply that you're out of, and what the risks are. You're not managing the global trends and things to be able to predict what you need and what's and the service levels of how long it takes to get those products. So when MRO is left unmanaged, you're decentralizing your buying, you're duplicating your vendors, you're splitting purchase orders, you have price variances, and in some cases you overrun your budgets, expired parts, overstock, you're not monitoring your recall parts, more emergency procurements and sole sources than we would like to have in government that bypasses our internal processes and controls as exceptions. It's just not very effective or efficient, and it's frustrating. It opens more doors and more opportunity for waste, fraud, abuse, and non-compliance, which we don't like any of those things in public procurement. And then here's where AI can change the game. AI applied to MRO data can prioritize procurement efforts. It can flag anomalies. It can identify risks. It can suggest improvements. It can guide leadership to research focus and eliminate inefficiencies while improving equality and compliance. And it helps uncover where spending is fragmented, redundant, non-compliant, where compliance gaps exist for insurance, licenses, departments, and including the inventory levels. And then when vendors perform best, which ones are the best and which ones are underperforming, to be able to make decisions to relook at your supply chain, relook at your vendors, relook at your contracts, and hold them accountable, whether suspending them, debarment, or just canceling for convenience or cause. And then which categories are ripe for consolidation, competition, cooperative contracts, and which ones should we do in-house to get better terms and conditions and pricing. So it will help us improve the forecasting and enable us to have more reliable, in some cases, just-in-time ordering, with appropriate levels of having what we need when we need it. But we can go to highly respected, reputable, best value vendors, not just the lowest costs. We can strengthen ethical and open, fair competition, and we can truly build strategic, ethical partnerships within the bounds of procurement law, in which we're obviously restrained by, unlike the private sector, that will last a long time. And we can make sure that our contracts are hard-earned, competitively awarded contracts, and that they're meeting the needs of our clients.
Absolutely. And that's a bunch of use cases where AI can definitely play a role. But in our experience, we think organizations aren't really ready for those foundational models to be built on top of their current data, right? So data cleanup and an ongoing discipline in governance, right, to ensure that on an ongoing basis your underlying data is clean. We believe that's super important. So how do you think folks in procurement, especially in key procurement decisions, can evaluate their readiness for AI? Is there a data maturity threshold of some sort that you think they need to hit?
Yeah, I think you have to have a lot of different components. I think you have to have a certain level of clean data, or even forget clean data. You have to have data. In some cases, the data is not sent. It's not digitized, right? So you have to have digitized data in a shared space. It has to be clean, trustworthy, and reliable. You have to have executive leadership with investments. You have to work on the people, process, and technology, which is a challenge. It's especially challenging in government with unions and sometimes non-merit based. We're rewarding longevity and loyalty over merits, whereas in the private sector, you're valuing results and merit, right? So that's another huge cultural challenge in public, and especially in state, local, and like counties and cities, etc. In the United States, for instance. So I think there's a lot. In some cases, we're talking about if you really take the open up the hood of the car of the government, what's really going on. Some areas of purchasing and procurement in some governments, it'll be like you're going back to the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, right? Fax machines are still utilized. Paper solicitations and bids are still accepted. I mean, we have to change, and a lot of times we have to change not only the executive leadership, we even have to lobby to the politicians to change the laws. I know, like, I'm not going to mention cities by name, but there's cities nearby, very large cities, like in the top 10 or 20 cities in the United States, that still have state laws on the books that they feel will not allow them to accept digital only bids, quotes, and responses to RFPs. That's a huge challenge. And we have to take those in via fax, via courier, and then scan 5 copies. That's just a lot of wasted resources and time, and frustrating for everybody. And we're talking about things taking weeks or months or years to award a contract. We need to get down to hours and days.
That makes sense. A few days ago, I think last year, there was this report by Boston Consulting, which evaluated data maturity, right? So the same problems that you've just mentioned, undigitized records, with just a total absence of data in the first place. That's common. It's surprisingly common even in private enterprises. Legacy industries, oil and gas, mining. We've seen pretty much the same patterns there as well. So, do you think that there's any misconception in what AI can really enable as far as procurement processes go, and that's why there's so much pushback from corporations on digitizing and making sure the underlying data is available in the first place?
Yeah, I think so. I think that the misconceptions about AI in public procurement anyway is that it's going to replace all of the procurement jobs, right? I think it's going to automate the redundant ones. There's going to be some low hanging fruit for sure, especially in the early adoption of AI, right? Um, so some misconceptions about AI is that like it's going to replace all the jobs, and the keyword is ALL in all caps. No, it's gonna the internship, the
Mm.
entry level jobs, the data entry, and some of the mundane stuff that we really shouldn't want to be doing anyway. So it's gonna really
Yeah.
cause people to get educated, to get certified, to really reach, especially in the white collar job space, in the service space, and the leadership space. And the other is that they think it's a silver bullet. So AI is already being integrated. Whether government has a high resistance, can we do it? Will we do it? When will we do it? When will we be ready to do it? Right. So a lot of times they're going to have to change policies, laws, procedures to figure out what the ethics of AI should or shouldn't be. Looking at how it hallucinates, looking at its reliability, looking at its cost. Will the agents be affordable enough? Will AI be affordable enough and available enough to everyone and to every organization, right? So it's not it's another tool in the toolbox to connect with your reliable data. And again, whatever tool you have, whether it's AI and whatever like e-procurement tool like you have, ERPs or specific e-procurement tools that are really designed for that, you have to have it all. Like you said, it all boils down to how you use it, investment in leadership, and the strategic intent of its use. And so it comes down to executive sponsorship, leadership, and building a culture that will innovate and continuously improve, and that will want to measure and take those measurements and do something with that information to actually get away from chaos or maybe a repeatable process. But a lot of the organizations, like you mentioned, especially local government, are at the like stage 0 or stage 1 of just managing by chaos or managing by a system, but that system's been in place for so long it hasn't adapted and kept up with the times or the needs.
See. I see. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Moving on, what do you think? There's an obviously a much less glamorous side to procurement processes, right? Specifically, we're talking about governance. So whether it's data governance, it's governance of contracts, processes. How do you think the impact of any of these initiatives play in any procurement transformation project? And how have you faced any challenge specific to governance? What has your experience been?
Yeah. So generally, state, local governments are very siloed, right? So they a lot of times
Hmm.
the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, and the communication. So you have data governance, and I think you're making sure everyone speaks the same language and is on the same team, right? One mission, one
Right.
vision, one set of core values, one staff, one budget, and one team. So the key of alignment, like aligning IT and purchasing, procurement, finance, and operations, is we need executive support. We need executive. It comes from the top to create a culture of collaboration, um, AI program charters to help us actually implement AI, and also just to work together without even AI, because remember, we're coming from possibly in some instances broken siloed systems that need to be smashed to be able to share data, and not hoard the data and make it more transparent, not only within the organization between departments, but with the public, right? So transparency is a foundation. Transparency and neutrality in the government space, and equality of making sure a level playing field for every vendor and every ultimately when they get awarded a contractor is one of the core values of procurement. And so having that executive support with AI program charters and executive charters to help increase the communication, the data sharing, the data accuracy, the investment in tools, whether they be AI or otherwise, to smash those silos, to increase the collaboration, to increase the trust and support functions so that we can actually have strong relationships and work together. As it doesn't, the military has gone in the US has gone purple, right? We have the Army, Air Force, Navy, Coast Guard, Marines, right? And their effort is to smash those silos and say, what is the ultimate mission is not to have to go to war, but to have a defense, to have peace. And peace is the ultimate goal. And at the same time, the mission of government is to have excellent government, right? So we need to do the same kind of smashing between departments, and then between our governments and our people. So executive support is key. We need to build strong mandates. We need to increase strong relationships and trust. We need to build cultures that are win-win cultures, that are high-performing cultures, that are merit-based cultures, not rewarding on longevity and loyalty, but rewarding on results. We need to reward innovation. We need to have bigger carrots and sticks. More sticks more carrots to attract innovation and take risk, so that when we fail, we learn. And then more sticks to not stay complacent, right? And not allow the status quo or the negative, what's happening negative. We need to be working and prioritizing those things. So like I said, one mission, one vision, one budget, one set of shared values, one staff, one team. Culture is key. And AI will hopefully allow for more of that sharing and collaboration. But we need to build those long-term relationships on trust. And historically, we've been more of an administrative function, seen as a wall, a block, or even a barricade that needed to go through. So we need to change that perception of the business cases, of the value we bring, not just in savings, not just in getting it done. Our clients might say in purchasing procurement, it's about being compliant, or not even compliant. They don't care about that. We care about that. We keep them out of orange jumpsuits. It's about getting it done like at 7-Eleven speed, but they want a Tiffany excellent solution with no risk, and they want it at Amazon or 7-Eleven convenient speed.
Yep. And you mentioned executive support and leadership buy-in earlier on. Do you think that's changed over the last few years? I know you've touched upon that subject, that after COVID, there's been a little bit of rocking in the boat. Do you think that's changed since then up till now? And where do you think this is moving in the future, say the next 3 to 5 years?
I think we had an initial push when we had to decentralize, when people were forced to work with laptops. Like, I've been in organizations in local government where everything was desktop based, and IT had to scramble and get everyone laptops to be able to work from home. So that's one change. We had a lot of momentum when COVID was active, and there was a lot of funding. A lot of local and state governments got a lot of care money and a lot of billions of dollars of money from the federal government to stay operational, that they really they spent, and I don't know if they necessarily spent it in all the right spots, but it would have made possibly some different investments, especially within procurement. But in the next 3 to 5 years, okay, first of all, I think we had a surge, but then I think we had a kind of a letdown, right? Immediate letdown when the funding kind of dried up. So we need to find some funding, and we're short-term focused. We need to be more long-term focused, like China. We need to have 10, 20, 30-year visions. When folks are promoted to executive level at the department level in procurement, if they're lucky enough to have a procurement department, those folks might be in those roles for 3 to 5, if they're lucky, 10 years, depending on how young they are. And there's kind of like forced models where they're going to have to retire at 20, 25, 30 years. And so at that point, they might just be counting down their days, their hours, their weeks, their years, their months. And they're just trying to survive and tread water till that day, right? But if we can talk about procurement investment for the long term and build strong business cases to actually be not thinking about 10 and 20 and 30 years ahead, we're going to have a much stronger ROI to do those investments. So the next 3 to 5 years, I think public procurement, I'm very optimistic and hopeful that will become more strategic. There'll be more investments in this area. For public procurement professionals and leaders will have more influence and effectiveness with executive leadership, and hopefully will be rising to executive leadership positions. And it's my hope and vision that public procurement will become more integrated within executive leadership on the same page. They'll play a larger role in mission intelligence, overall governance, that they'll have the AI tools and the e-procurement tools they need to be successful. That things like supplier diversity and sustainability, resilience planning, interagency collaboration will become the norm, not the exception. We can really choose, like Disney says, synergy, where everybody's on the same page, working and paddling in the same direction. And I hope procurement leadership with AI and with all the other departments and other governments will not only help true procurement excellence, but will assist us in connecting the entire team to ensure true collaboration, true synergy, and true public service. We need excellence in public service. Without procurement excellence, I don't think that's possible.
So that's great. That's extremely insightful, Chris. I know we have just a couple of minutes left, so we'll do a quick lightning round where we ask you some quick questions, sort of like a rapid fire round. Are you inspired by any book, podcast, or any thought leader in this space specific to procurement? And uh, you know, uh, is there anything that you would want to suggest to our viewers?
Well, in the U.S., if you're not a member of NIGP or NCMA, I would suggest that you get connected with your peers. Those two organizations are really great in the government space for procurement excellence.
Okay.
And I have to give a shout out to Rick Grimm, who's been the CEO of NIGP for the last 28 years. He's retiring now, but he's left us in good hands. He's given us his all, and he's a great leader. And then that's in the procurement space. Of course, you said if there's a thought leader, a book, or whatever, I'm always inspired. And this is an oldie but a goodie, but Stephen Covey and the 7 Habits of Highly Effective. I think we need to sometimes go back to the basics and look at. We need to get out of that. And one lesson from that book is to get out of the urgent, not important quadrant and that firefighting quadrant. And we need to get into that proactive, what's most important, and do the right most. And so that's what I'm hoping we can achieve. And everyone will go back and reread that chapter, reread that book. And if you connect with me or Rick Grimm, or if you're watching and you're in the government space in the United States, please think about NCMA and NIGP and your local chapter. I think it's important to be connected to global and local best practices.
And what's one word of advice, or if you just had to wrap it up in one simple sentence, what would it be for young professionals who are just getting into procurement, or they're just starting into their digital transformation journey? What would be your quick advice?
Well, I think it's don't get overwhelmed. I think resilience and persistence are important. Look to
Mhm.
build your reputation and build your skill sets so they're transferable. Strengthen yourself with certifications and global best practice. Continue to learn every day and connect. We
Yeah.
cannot do this as an island. This is a team sport. So we need to, and I think what AI also shows us is that we're going to value more leadership and more interpersonal skills to be able to be problem solvers and connectors. And so those strong interpersonal relationships and those soft skills and that EQ, we really need to focus on that, of working together as teams across countries, across organizations, across divisions, or what have you, for the same goals. We all have the right integrity, I think, and the right type A personalities to get things done. But we need to be able to work more collaboratively, less competitively, and understand that we're all in this together, right? So get connected to mentors, get connected, get as much education and skills, continually be a sponge, never stop learning, and continually to work on your interpersonal skills and your relationships that they're going to, and connect. By the way, I see so many people in the government space that are not on LinkedIn, for instance. And I think it's not about being on LinkedIn to be found by a recruiter or your resume, or to be found by another job. It's not. It's about helping each other. A lot of us have encountered some of these same problems that we're having, or have already solved those problems in different ways. The more we collaborate and share what those problems are and solutions are, the better we'll all be. And so I think it's about
Yeah,
being
absolutely.
connected and just continuing to grow your network and grow your knowledge, and give not to get, but give to give. And you'll get back in tenfold what you give.
Great. No, that's great. Chris, thanks a lot. We really appreciate you taking the time joining in. I can't believe we covered so many different topics in such a power-packed 30-minute session, but it was wonderful. It was extremely insightful. And I'm sure you added a lot of value to our viewers, and something to definitely think about.
Thank you, Kevin. It's always a pleasure to speak about procurement excellence and innovation and AI. I just want to encourage you and others to make sure we're connected on LinkedIn, like I said, and let's all go forward and be great.
Absolutely.
And my favorite saying is "Carpe diem, every diem," and that means seize the day every day.
Yep.
Let's make the best of it.
Yep. Awesome. Thanks a lot, Chris.
Thank you, Kevin.